you're a node in a network, and so you can do a little bit of arithmetic very rapidly and just figure out how powerful you are. You know 1,000 people. They know 1,000 people. That means that you're one person away from 1 million people and 2 persons away from 1 billion people. And you're the center of that network. And now the way networks work is that information propagates in a network manner. So don't underestimate the power of your speech. Don't underestimate the power of truth. There's nothing more powerful. Tell the truth.
Originally, this podcast was going to be part of a series called Born Again Men, but I've decided for now to stick with Life Talks. Born Again Men is built into Life Talks, and many of the guests I have on embody those principles that I speak about. Born Again Men came to me as a deep religious idea that we don't become the best version of ourselves until we face our shadow, our dark side, our pain, our limited personality, and how we see the world versus how the world truly is. It is the ability to turn our sin, our ignorance, and negativity into an authentic positive, and to truly see all as good. To see that everything is happening for us and not to us. Not just to know that intellectually, but in our hearts. Until we do that, we are but a fraction of our potential. I speak about this with today's guest. The music you just heard in the intro is made by Akira the Don. The song is entitled Tell the Truth, or At Least Don't Lie, featuring Jordan Peterson. I encourage you to go back and listen to those words carefully, as it reveals the power of networking and the ripple effect. This genre of music is called meaning wave, which is a fusion of wave music with meaningful lyrical content and lo-fi hip-hop. Some of my favorites of his include Taking Souls featuring David Goggins, Deadwood featuring Jordan Peterson, Discipline Equals Freedom featuring Jocko Willink, Anything featuring Alan Watts and Carl Jung, Summoned to Move featuring Wes Watson, and Don't Worry featuring Terrence McKenna. These are just a few examples of the music he has created, and if you value the content I put out, I'm confident you'll value his work as well, and encourage you to look up more of his music. Here is Akira the Don. Akira, thanks for joining me, brother.
Yo, de nada. ¿Cómo estás?
So we started, this is my first time meeting you. I said, let's talk for a few minutes.
I said, fuck that. Said no. Said no. What you did, that's rule number 1 in podcasting. You hit record immediately. Otherwise, you have the cool conversations before the thing starts. And then you're like, oh, we should have pressed record. Oh, no. And then you go, oh, so we were just talking about that thing. Say that thing you said again. Yep. Then you go, okay, I'll try and recreate that spontaneous magic. Why not?
That's it, man. I've done that so many times. For people who don't know you, if maybe you can just share a short, a little synopsis about what you do, who you are.
Yo, what do I do? Right now, I squint a lot because my contact lenses are giving me jip. So if you're like, why is this guy squinting a lot? It's because of the contact lenses. So that's what that. So yeah, I do a lot of squinting because I was up till, like 6 a.m. Because it's nearly Christmas. Word around town. It's nearly the birth of a baby time, and I'm trying to working on getting as much music and video done before that, so that I can have a little few days rest with the family and not actually be working for the first time since last Christmas. You see, and as for the working, I make music, and the music integrates the wisdom of the ages into that most powerful delivery form that we know, which is music. That's what I'm up to.
I found you a few years ago. You helped me in some of the lowest parts of my life. And, for such a long time, I said, I wish someone would make some music that would just be able to take those clips of people saying some great wisdom and make it into the music in the midst of all the crap and garbage that we have now. And I came across you and the music that you put together with Jocko and Alan Watts, David Goggins, Jordan Peterson, all of these people. What was the spark? What was the catalyst that made you just say, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, it's what I always did. I realize in retrospect. So I always did it when I was like 7 or something. We had a music class, and they gave us some tape recorders, and I sampled there was a TV on a trolley in the corner with a news broadcast going on it, and I sampled that, something about war breaking out in Eastern Europe and what have you, and I turned that into a song. you know. When I was making rap music, which is what I was occupied with from the millennium through till sort of 2008, 10, 12, 13. The whole time I was doing that, I was making these mixtapes. And I'd have like 3 songs that were rap songs, and then I would have 1 or 2 songs that would be an instrumental with a sampled voice over the top, which you would have in hip hop for like the intro of a track, you know, like 15 seconds or something. Sometimes they'd sample a bit of John Kennedy talking about the moon landing over like the first 15 seconds, right? I was always like, oh, what if that was the whole song? That would be cool, you know? So I always did that. But then in 2014, like around 2013, I decided I'd been working on my 3rd album, which was the 3rd in a trilogy. And I realized I was not yet wise enough to make it. The first one had been easy. That was about, it was called When We Were Young. It was about being a kid coming into interfacing with the world and being an individual in the face of a society that wants to stomp that out of you. And then the second one was about realizing that one's actually part of a greater whole, and the individual is more than the individual. The individual is connected to everything else. Then the 3rd album, I realized I was not yet smart and wise enough to make it, and I needed to go live some more, and I needed to at least like raise a child, at least one, before I had the nerve to go about making that record. So I occupied myself with becoming as good a producer as I could be and making instrumental records and things of that nature, and learning things. And at some point, it dawned on me that somebody who spent 40 years thinking about a subject might be the authority to speak on said subject, and I could just sample them, and that would be the song. I didn't need to go out and think about. In fact, it would be impossible for me to go and think about certain things for 40 years and then make songs about it, because there were so many things to think about. But I could take, because there's this thing I'd noticed in rap and other forms of music, wherein you'd have people sort of preaching at you, saying, do this, live your life this way, whatever. And my reaction would generally be, who the fuck are you to tell me this, young rap person? You don't know this stuff. This isn't the life you're living. I'm not taking this stuff from you. I'm not taking you seriously. It's why a lot of conscious rap, not all of it, but a lot of it comes off as corny, because the people delivering the stuff aren't actually embodying that of which they speak. And you recognize that. You recognize that viscerally on a subconscious and a conscious level. That when people telling you to do, you know what I mean? That's like 98% of Instagram or whatever, right? It's like people trying to give you advice who ain't even, they're not that. People trying to give you business advice and their businesses aren't successful or whatever. People trying to give you health advice, they're not that healthy. People trying to give you fitness advice and they're busting out back squats with false plates and shit of that nature. You know what I mean? Like, so you recognize that fundamentally. So that's partly why I sort of began that experiment. And I remember I did 3 tracks in a week, one of which sampled Jordan Peterson talking about the utility of being a good plumber, and how, you know, just being competent at something in a society was actually very, very valuable. And I had another song sampling a lady talking about the Welsh notion of hiraeth, which is a kind of nostalgia for a past, for something that no longer exists. And I did another song sampling Big Smoke from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, talking about all you need to do is keep up with the damn train, CJ. All you need to do is follow the damn train, CJ. And I put those 3 songs out, and amazingly, completely kind of the opposite of what I assumed would occur. I thought everybody would love the Big Smoke one, for example, and people had already liked sort of nostalgia-y, hiraeth-y type messaging, and it was a lo-fi beat. But by far and away the most popular was the Jordan Peterson one. And all these people going, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh, I've wanted something like this to exist for however long, and da-da-da-da. And at the time, I remember I'd had a James Altucher podcast on, and as if he was speaking directly into my soul, he addressed the microphone, I guess, and he said, quadruple down on what's working, he said, very commandingly. And so I said, okay, I shall. And I quadrupled down on that. And then I made a mixtape, and then I just kept sort of leaning into it. into this thing that came to be known as Meaning Wave and kept sort of going deeper and deeper into it, and you know, making it more and more of a specific art form with a shape and a purpose and a plan. And that was 5 years ago, and now here we are with like 80 something albums and going on 600 songs.
You're putting out magic, bro. I mean, you're absolutely putting out magic. What comes to mind, I mean, the song that you put out recently too, not too recently, I think it was last summer with Wes Watson. You know, there's just what it makes me think of is another song that you put out with The Spirit of the Father. And I think Jordan Peter, there's two songs actually. It's Spirit of the Father, and I don't remember the exact title, but The Node in the Network, right? That's what got me to actually start my podcast. When I really saw the power of responsibility, because when most people say responsibility, it's like, you better, do this and do that. It's like, no, responsibility is seeing the effect that you have on everybody. Because for so long, I was trying to understand the paradox of you don't matter. You're just a speck of dust. You're nothing. You're insignificant. And the other side of I'm so significant. I'm so important. I will save the world. And how to balance those both. And I couldn't, because I would be like, yeah, it would be this ego that I'm so important. And then I would just be like, I'm just insignificant. It doesn't matter. And I would connect with different people. And now when I heard The Node in the Network, I just said, that makes sense. It's just a matter of business. Everything you do matters, not from an egotistical standpoint, but that it just ripples in ways. And,
it
and
just
then,
does matter. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the butterfly effect. We know that with everything. But the point is like everything you do matters. But if you're not acting with a definiteness of purpose, then what you do, which matters, can be catastrophic. If you're out there flailing around like without a purpose, without a reason of being, without having mastered yourself and programmed yourself, you're a fucking danger. Because like, if you don't program yourself, somebody else will. So then you're like a fucking creepy bot in someone else's army. You're a tool in someone else's plan. But if you haven't made yourself, if you haven't tooled yourself up into that fine machine that you can be, you know what I mean? You're a clumsy ox of a moron. If you think about everyone as a kind of like mech suit or something, right? And I had this like idea of like turning yourself into the ultimate sort of mech suit and then turning that over to God. Right. And then God can use you to do great things. Stevie Wonder always talks about how he doesn't write his songs. God writes them through him. He just made himself competent enough to play those songs. And then he handed himself over to God. You know, if that's kind of what everybody's doing, if your mech suit is rubbish and you haven't been looking after it and you haven't trained it, it's like a fucking big baby with guns or something, you know? And if that thing is then like being controlled by others because you haven't bothered to take control of yourself and take responsibility for this crazy thing. It's like, a car is a crazy dangerous thing. If people don't know how to drive, if you've got like drunk morons just fucking playing bumper cars, you know what I mean? Like that's a nightmare. And that's the situation you find yourself in if you're in a society where people aren't taking control of themselves and taking responsibility for themselves. It's like a giant bumper car thing with like real fucking cars, and they've got chainsaws on them and shit and rocket launchers and stuff. And yeah, that's where we're at. What's Carl Jung, the Carl Jung or Nietzsche? I can't remember one of them. I think about it a lot. The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, it will tell you. Yeah,
and that makes
that's why. Yeah, go
on. Your song Deadwood, because, and that's why I made my my podcast name here, Born Again Men, because when I was growing up, the world told me to be born again through Christ is the idea of I'm just going to have some water splashed on me. That didn't resonate. It wasn't until I really saw, for example, that song that you have, The Spirit of the Father, right? There's a pattern of behavior. The spirit is a pattern. And the more that we have that pattern, and that's how we're in this world we play. We try a certain pattern. These different suits, as you say, the mechas, we put these different suits on and we're tasting experience. And what are we getting out of this? And I think that pattern is the ultimate way of being in the world. And I think that with the born again, what I've realized is it's painful. It is a painful process, but that pain brings us closer to God. And how do we endure that pain? That's why when I hear songs that you put out, like Jocko, like Good, how can we take those negatives and flip them into positives? You have the Goggins, You Can't Hurt Me. But it's not a cold You Can't Hurt Me. It's You Can't Hurt Me because I've gone so deep within myself that I've been reborn. And like you said earlier in the podcast, you can't fake that. You know it when you're around it. You can feel the presence of somebody. You know, that's why there's so many arguments that are on text. You need the more real it is. The ultimate is obviously being in person with somebody. But when we have something like this, where we can see our body language and when we're speaking with each other, there's more power there. You know, and in this digitalized world, you know, I think it's a lot of people they can listen, but they can't hear. And I think one of the things you're doing is you're helping people to hear.
Yeah, well, that's the skill. If you've never been necessarily taught how to pay attention, and you've been surrounded by bullshit your whole life, sometimes some people, it's harder for them to discern. Although I feel that everybody knows on a fundamental level, and most of this stuff that we're doing is a relearning or a remembering of things that we already know that are fundamental to us as a people, as a species, as a being. Stuff that babies know, stuff that cats know. You know, they kind of hammer it out of people. Part of what society does is kind of hammer just the inherent common sense, knowledge, awareness, etc., beauty, greatness out of the individual. That's why schools are such a scary proposition. And my son doesn't go to one, and I really don't recommend them. But
God bless.
you know, unless you want to spend, you know, decades unraveling and unlearning shit, and maybe you do. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe
People
that's
will
what we're
say,
all
but
doing.
my son will be different. And it's like, good.
Good. Yes. That's the fucking point. That's the point. Yeah, right. You will. God bless. Yeah. It's all of that. All of that is wonderful. All of that is beautiful. Suffering means you're existing. That's a good thing. Responsibility is the easiest route to meaning. You got all these people wandering around. Where do I find meaning? Oh, I'm depressed. I assume some responsibility. I know society does everything it can to tell you that's a bad idea and you shouldn't do that. And you should roll around in bed smoking weed and eating gummy bears till you're 60, you know. And oh, no, don't have any kids. They're bad for the planet. Whatever the fuck dumb shit they're saying this week. Like but it's like, you know, it's really easy nowadays because all you have to do to have a wonderful life is just do exactly the opposite of what the society is telling you to do. Do the opposite of what the government and the society and the so-called experts in pretty much any field are telling you to do. And everything will be wonderful. You know what I mean? And they always reveal themselves in their inversions. They cannot help themselves.
Yeah.
So it's pretty, yeah, it's a great time to be alive right now for many, many reasons. And that's one of them. It's pretty simple. People think it's confusing, but it's really not when you bear things like that in mind.
Yeah, I just did a podcast talking and I've really been reflecting on this past year or two, the idea of paradoxes, you know, because when you say that advice, there's a part of me that it makes the argument for the other side, right? In the idea of, because people don't want to listen. And my goal, I'm sure your goal with your music, is to awaken that human spirit, our full potential, to speak to that part of us that is just, it's supreme, it's the infinite. When you say, you know, we go against, the same advice can be given, say, keep going with society, see how that makes you feel. Because you know deep in your own being that, well, at least for me, I speak for myself, there's times where I said, you know, I'll reject that and then I'll keep going the way of the world and I'll keep suffering. So there's such a beauty of freedom to say, hey, you know what? You know, because some people are so resistant. I see that in myself. There's times where I'm resistant. You know, the truth. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Liar, Liar, but it's a movie where he's a lawyer and he has to speak one day, but he has to say the truth. And you just see, it forces him to he can't say the white lies. He can't say, and it's so amazing how I really like the analogy that you had, the Mecca. Those mechas. That's what we do. We put these suits on, and then we're reflecting back that which we are. And it's really, going back to what we were saying before, the Deadwood, that song resonated so much. People need to check out that song right now, Deadwood. It really is a death. It is a death.
Well, just to break that down for people then. So
Yeah.
break that down for people. Otherwise, what's he fucking talking about a Deadwood? The idea being that, the forests need to cull the deadwood from trees, essentially. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where you have far too much of it. And that's how you end up with forest fires, for example, which can go really, really wrong if you're not removing this deadwood with some kind of regularity and some kind of, routine or system or definiteness of purpose. If you just let that shit build up, then one day you're just gonna have a massive fucking blaze and it'll destroy everything. You gotta be careful. So you gotta keep removing that deadwood. Is one part of it.
Yeah, and that deadwood represents the white lies, the lies we tell ourselves.
Well, all the stuff there's lots of things in your life that build up with it. If you're not paying attention, so much of it goes down to not paying attention and not thinking things through. There would be no radical Marxists, for example, if people just thought that ideology through to its natural conclusion. People don't go all the way with the thinking. They just get the bit that makes them feel nice and they go, okay, carry on. So if you're not thinking and you're not paying attention, then you will allow your life to become a cluster of dreadful habits that will carry you to hell. Because the deeper into life you get, the more of your life becomes habits. This is why time feels like it's speeding up.
What is hell, Akira?
Well, hell is what we create. And hell is what happens if you don't pay attention and you're not acting with the definiteness of purpose, because the devil finds work for idle hands to do. And if you're not paying attention, then that's what will happen. The very first summers, you remember your early summers, they would go on forever, right? Those early summers, you're playing fucking those holidays. Oh my God, because it was all new. You hadn't turned everything into habits yet. And the deeper into life you go, the more things become habits. And if you're not paying attention to what those habits are and what you've created, that will all be unconscious, and that will lead you wherever it leads you. It won't be a place of your own choosing. So just one thing you can do in that deadwood, how would you call it? Clearing?
Pruning, yeah.
Pruning. What are the gardening? All the gardening words. Is, just pay attention to your habits. That's one easy thing you can do, is pay attention to your habits on a regular basis and go, okay, what habits have I got? Have I developed any new ones? I check in every month. There's always a couple new ones, and they're always bad. And then but once you've isolated that and notice that, you can replace them. Habits are very difficult to break, but they're very easy to replace. Not to say you can't break habits. I've broken habits. I stopped smoking without replacing it with anything else. For example, same with drink. Although you could argue that I replaced drink with an adventure of my own choosing, because its adventure was why I was really enjoyed booze. I realized after making that song about that. But anyway, one way of stopping that forest fire going crazy is to make sure that your habits are serving you. Habits are an inevitability of existing in this world for any given point of time. However, bad habits are not an inevitability. Bad habits are purely a result of you not paying attention to them and choosing them. You can choose your habits and you can choose good ones. So I would definitely advise that.
And consistency. That's something that I actually saw a podcast with you recently where you were speaking about other musicians in your field, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea people will pop up. But what separated you from some of those other musicians was that you kept going. Maybe if you can dive into that consistency and the importance of that.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, that exists in the same field as that which we were just discussing. And consistency becomes a habit. You can make that be a habit, so it's not so hard. Oh, how can I be consistent? Oh, it's so difficult. Well, if it becomes a non-negotiable and it's something you do every day, whatever it is you do, in my case, it's music. So I'm doing something to do with music every single day of my life. And that works in many ways. One of the things it does is it keeps me in the zone of making music. And when you're in the zone, things are magical and glittering and shining, and it builds up a momentum and a power. And if you keep moving, that momentum is consistent. Momentum is constant, but it only goes in one direction. So you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're either going up, down, sideways, forward, whatever it is. That way, this way, whatever. And you can build a charge on that momentum from your consistency. And if you consistently show up, then that will build that charge and that momentum. And you'll be like in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, where Sonic gets the power up and he turns into Super Saiyan Sonic. And he can't fall off the rails or nothing. And he just keeps going and getting more powerful. And that can be your life if you go with consistency. And all consistency is a non-negotiable showing up. But like I said, that can become a habit. A lot of people will non-negotiably show up to the pub. This is British people. They have pubs. They go and they drink. A lot of people will non-negotiably show up to McDonald's, whatever the fuck it is. People will non-negotiably show up to all sorts of things that are not good for them and are difficult. There's some difficulty in even getting to the place, and then there's a great difficulty in the effects of what that does to them over time. And that brings a great deal of pain and suffering and sorrow and hardship. So you might as well pick the thing that's going to result in the better life, the better outcome. So just go, hey, what's that going to be? And then reverse engineer it. Whatever it is, you want to be a great pianist. You want to be good at baking cakes. You want to be a power lifter. You want to be really good at recognizing different genres of B. Whatever the fuck it is, you can reverse engineer that and introduce a system into your life to execute on that on a consistent, every day, all the time basis. And that will carry you to that desired outcome because it will become a habit. And it will just carry you like someone crowd surfing at a music festival. It will be an inevitability. But yeah, in regards to the questions, I've probably veered off a little bit. But one thing I did notice is because I just consistently kept going for the past 20 years, what I did see was lots of people come and go. Lots of people rise and fall. Lots of people who were given every opportunity, put on the cover of every magazine, given $1 million record budgets, because they failed at the consistency thing, because they gave up, because they quit, because they stopped, and then couldn't work out how to get back to where they were because they fell out of the zone. The most of the people, like most, have come and gone in my particular area of activity and expertise. And that happens everywhere with everyone. And it was purely so no one ever fails. No one ever fails because they're stopped. Like no one ever fails. The only reason anyone ever fails, the only people as far as I've been able to observe, is because they gave up. You know what I mean? Sam Hyde, everyone in the world tried to stop Sam Hyde. They canceled his TV show. Some of the biggest names in entertainment conspired to destroy this man's life, pull him off TV, but he never stopped. And then this year, he's in this massive televised influencer boxing match, and he's huge, and everybody loves him, and this whole new generation of people who had no idea who he was are introduced to him, and he's hilarious and brilliant, and the people love him. And he has another shot at doing on a large grand scale what he loves to do, because he never stopped. They yeeted him off every platform, off of YouTube, off of Twitter, off everything. He still kept making videos and sketches, and he put them on Gumroad. The fuck is a Gumroad? You know what I mean? He never stopped. He decided, these people will not defeat me. They will not stop me. I will keep going no matter what. And he did. People can do that if they choose.
I've gotten some censorship on YouTube, and at first I'm like, oh man, I gotta conform. And then I said, what am I doing? That's not why I started this. If there's a will, there's a way. And I originally got into this because I saw so much of the divide in our country by forces, that are up there. And I came up with the idea, I think that, and this isn't to be set in stone that these are the numbers, so don't fact check me, but it's like the 5% versus the 5% versus the 90%. And I look at the 5% as the wolves, the people who saw through the game and then they won it for themselves. And then the other 5% are people who are in the arena who see the wolf in themselves. They see the wolf, they see the sheep in themselves. And they choose to believe in the sheep. Because you look around, there's a lot of idiots. But you look inside yourself, and at least for me, I look inside myself and I saw the idiot within me. walking around and people still believed in me, you know, and I think that it takes a lot more strength to believe in people who don't believe in themselves. So, you know, and I think there's a fuel in that. Um, you know, and I constantly come back to that idea of flipping those negatives into positives. You know, when I was just, you know, I just had a video flagged on YouTube. I made that my banner now on Facebook. And if I want to keep getting blocked, I'll keep getting blocked because I want people to see it, you know, because originally when I first saw this, because I was not living my truest self in 2020. I had, you know, I struggled with porn addiction and I had all these problems. I wasn't taking responsibility. I wasn't disciplined. I wasn't consistent. I had these ideas, but I didn't feed them. And when I started to just say, you know what, fuck it, let's go. I want you guys, because I would share with friends and family. It was called conspiracy theorist, all this stuff. And I said, how do you not see this? And the problem was because I didn't believe in myself. So I just started really just, let me just dive into it. I want people to see it, you know, and it's brought me closer to, you know, my faith with Christ. I mean, when you really reflect on that idea of just the idea that he understood people so deeply, he didn't take things personally. And like the more that it's such a beautiful thing, but you only see it when you start doing it. When you start seeing the hatred or the ignorance or the you can't do it, you realize people are fighting their own selves. And the more I see that, the more is like it's so paradoxical. It's so paradoxical. You know, does that resonate with you? Is there anything that, you know, in your journey where you would have pushback, friends and family? I guess, you know, for people who are watching who you know, have a dream, who are maybe stuck in a 9 to 5, and they
If you don't have any, you're going in the wrong direction. If there's anything video games have taught me, it's if that you're coming across resistance, if you're coming across puzzles or enemies, you're going in the right direction. If there's nothing to do, if there's no resistance, you're going fucking backwards. Or at least in some wrong way that hasn't been properly coded, and you're not going to find anything. You're going to find a half-finished island that you're only supposed to glitch into. Shouts out to Mexico and Red Dead Redemption 2. What a disappointment that was. So yeah, of course, you will definitely get resistance. If you're not getting resistance, you're not doing anything worthwhile. If you don't have haters, you ain't popping. You know what I mean? Someone put that in a record. Your percentage thing is interesting. I don't know if you derive that from anything specific, but there's 1,000 cultures over human history have come to the exact same conclusions, although the figures vary slightly. It's very similar to that. The Nation of Islam, who call themselves 5%ers, which I don't know if you know of them. If you listen to rap music, you'll know about the 5%ers, because like a lot of the rappers that came out in New York in the 90s were 5%ers. Jay Electronica's a 5%er. Wu-Tang Clan are 5%ers. The idea being that 10% of 85% of humanity is essentially undeliberately maneuvered, as in, I don't like the word sheep, but I suppose that would be a shorthand for it, or acting unconsciously, just kind of following.
Yeah, that's why I say there's a sheep
they're supposed to be doing, right?
Me.
Yeah, there is in everyone. That's the thing. So yeah, Nation of Islam have it. That's 85% of people. Then 10% of people are wicked, and they're trying to, you know, lead the 85% in a bad direction, shall we say? And then 5% are wise, and they're the poor, wise, righteous teachers, or something like that. That's the Nation of Islam thing. There was others older than that have it down. I think it was something like 6. That it's like 5% are wicked, 5% are aware, 20% are reachable, and the remaining 60 will just follow what the 20 do. Will follow what the mass do. So it's never a case that you're trying to reach like 85% of the populace. You're just trying to influence that remaining 20 that kind of can go either way, that can be convinced that wickedness is actually goodness, and so on and so forth. Because you could always make these arguments. And there's variations of that have gone back through as far as humanity has record of that idea. And it's currently represented in some of the more detailed versions of the, what do they call it? Scott Adams and Elon are into it. Simulation theory. Because in simulation theory, Like 60, I think it's 60 to 80% of the people you will encounter, just like the aforementioned Red Dead Redemption, are not human players, but
NPCs.
NPCs. And so when the NPC meme is really interesting because that's actually uh, in many spiritual teachings and many esoteric sort of handings down of groups of knowledge. That's real. Like a lot of people believe that to be true, and this is a modern way of describing something that people have thought for thousands and thousands of years. Um, you know, and that's what's always interesting. That's why we need new mythology. That's why we're at this interesting sort of turning point with regards to our mythology, because our mythology, the purpose of a mythology is to encode that which the society already knows in such a fashion that a newborn individual can receive it and receive as much of it as possible in order to keep moving and progressing the species, right? How the fuck can an individual learn everything that was learned before? That took lifetimes and lifetimes to learn. How the fuck can an individual do that? That's a crazy proposition. So that's what mythology is for. And we're in this weird period right now where our mythology has been hijacked for the purposes of propaganda, or a lot of it just doesn't make sense to modern people because the references, because of the sort of post-religious nature of a lot of modern man and what have you, which takes us back to the purpose of Meaning Wave, partly which is to encode as much of that sort of wisdom and knowledge in a form that people can imbue easily as possible, which is music. Music is an incredibly powerful delivery mechanism. And that's how people used to transmit these mythologies. That's how the epic tale of Beowulf was told for hundreds and thousands of years, however the fuck long it was. It was told by people essentially rapping it around campfires or singing it, singity rapping it, finding the melody and the rhythm inherent within those words. And that's how people could carry whole books in their heads before the printing press came along and delegated something that was the domain of every individual to a subset of people, just like the priests delegated God. You know, it's this strange thing that always happens with our technology. It always has that shadow side. Printing press had that shadow side.
Yeah, I was working out today and I was thinking about, what you're doing in essence, because we're clearly in a spiritual warfare. And it took me, that's why I've really reflected on what Jordan Peterson said in that, especially in that song, because it just hits different. The pattern of behavior. So we're in a war for pattern. How are we going to operate in the world? And I think there's one way, and you find that within yourself. But essentially what you're doing, I see like this big warfare going on, and because in war, there would be these guys who would have music, they would beat the drums, there would be some sort of resonance to get people in tune, to get into that warrior spirit, and I think, at least from listening to a lot of your music, that's what you have done with me. And also what's interesting, what I like is that you're making music, for example, with Alan Watts, and then you got Jocko and David Goggins. How do you reconcile those two? Because that's something that I think is at least in my experience has been difficult, because there's days where I'm like, let's go to the gym, let's go Akira, let's get some Goggins, let's get some music, get some. And then I'm being mean to myself, and I'm not, I think we need to be truthful, and, I'm not saying don't say mean things, right? But the warrior, but also the part of us that, Christ, for example, said, my yoke is easy, right? Because it's almost like, how do we be strong as a warrior, but in our mind, we're in that flow, or in our heart, we're in that flow, right? So we're flowing. But so how do we integrate those two parts, or anything that, you would share on that in your journey?
Well, you answered your own question there, because that's how one does recognize those seemingly different schools of thought, because you do need that, what's put it, fullness of the view. And that's why I choose the people I choose, because they represent these different archetypal aspects. Goggins is this warrior monk, Jocko is this military commander type of a spirit, this kind of, he's Marcus Aurelius, whatever it is, the kind of thing that Jocko represents goes back to the dawn of humanity, as surely as does the spirit of the father or the magician or the wizard, or, all these various archetypes. So all these people embody this aspect, and you need all of it. You need all of them. Watts has this thing, which is almost like a bit of a trickster kind of thing in him. But he certainly reminds us of the playful nature of this reality, which is very, very necessary because people can go far too deep into the warrior or what have you, for example, and can lose themselves, and everyone is different. Everyone has a different role to play. Everyone is made of different things. Everyone's ancestry, you see this in the issues we have with nutrition. There is no one size fits all, because some of us are descended from people who only ate bison, and you try giving motherfuckers like that a leaf, they will be ill. Try and tell everybody they got to eat a leaf is stupid. But some motherfuckers just ate leaves. Some people were from that weird tribe of humans who would wander into a forest, and most of them would die because most of what they ate would kill them. But yet they kept going. I think about those people. They were crazy. And like most of what you eat that is not an animal in a forest, wherever on this earth it is, will kill you. It's poisonous. Those plant-eating motherfuckers were brave and crazy. You know what I mean? But some of us are descended from the plant-eating motherfuckers, and we're different. I'm not one of those. But everybody's
teacher
different.
is direct experience, right? You have
Uh-huh.
to try things out for yourself and don't just follow.
Well, it's this thing. So how do we progress? How do we learn from experience while simultaneously not having to repeat the mistakes of the past and those that preceded us? That's one of the interesting balances. So again, this is part of what we're doing. So, I do meaning wave in sort of seasons or phases or what have you. And there will be a subject or a theme. And I will choose a group of people who have a different vantage point on that theme. And they'll be talking about the same thing, whether it's freedom or discipline or awareness or consciousness or duty or whatever the idea is. And you'll have, Watts will be over there looking from that angle, and he's really looked from that angle very hard, and he's studied it, and he's gone to the Eastern traditions, and he's gone back thousands of years to look from this angle. Over there is Dr. Peterson, looking at this angle, staring at the same thing, but from this angle. You know what I mean? Wes Watson's over there. He was in jail for 15 years, looking at it from that angle. You know what I mean? And he's got that perspective. And between these bad motherfuckers, you're going to find something that resonates with you and works for you. And also, depending on the fucking day, it might be different. Some day you might need to draw more heavily from Watts than from Goggins.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. But all of these people are essentially saying the same thing, even though it seems to be completely the opposite sometimes. You'll realize after some years, there'll be a little light bulb moment, and you understand that. And one of mine was when I realized that Charles Bukowski and Jocko Willink were saying the same thing, which is Charles Bukowski, a sort of degenerate poet.
Yep.
Who had a horrible fucking life and then found fame in his 50s.
He did If. He has the poem If.
No, that was Rudyard
Or is
Kipling.
Okay.
That was
I'm mixing
Rudyard
them up.
Kipling. That's so good. Bukowski.
What did he do?
Bukowski songs? What was the one last year? How am I suddenly blanking on all the records I've made? Bukowski did the Genius of the Crowd. That one about the kind of, which talks about the cruelty inherent in sort of mobs.
Okay.
He did the one about the end of the world type doom scenario.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was a poet and a writer, and something he said which really kind of changed my direction in my earlier life. He wrote a short story about being at some awful orgy, and some guy tried to rape him or something like that while he was in the middle of trying to steal someone's girlfriend, and he was hammered and got in some scrapes, and he got arrested, something like that. Eventually, gets home at 5 a.m, drinks a bottle of wine, collapses, falls asleep, wakes up at 12, takes a shit, goes back to bed, closes the curtains, says, "Life is as kind as you let it be," which is funny. But I really thought on that. I was like, holy shit! Like, life is as kind as you let it be, as in you decide. In Charles Bukowski's case, he decided to take radical responsibility and go self-responsibility, go back to bed and close all the windows. But he was fully taking responsibility for and control of his life. Like, if things aren't the way you would like them to be, you can change them. I took that as a signal to literally move to a different country. That
Where
life
were
is
you?
as kind as you let it be. I was in the UK at that point, and I'd have been visiting the USA. And every time I went to the USA, it was wonderful, and I had a great fortune. And the attitude of the people was very can-do and positive. And in London, I was like banging my head against a brick wall, and everyone was pissed off and depressed and angry and what have you. And from reading that thing and seeing, oh shit, I get to choose. It's up to me. Life is as kind as you let it be. I could go to that place where it's kind, essentially. I could move to that different place. That's exactly the same as the radical self-responsibility of discipline equals freedom. That's exactly the same as the radical self-responsibility that all these people will tell you. You get to decide. It's up to you. You're not a victim of this life. Life is not happening to you. You are happening to life. And while the opposite could be true on some level, you get to decide. And in deciding, that becomes the truth. That's the operating system through which you can have the most meaningful, useful, satisfying, and happy life, is the one where you decide, where you're making the decisions.
Yeah, the ability to frame it. And I think the lower self has I've really kind of appreciated that animal, or the negative mind, or however you want to frame it. Because the lower self is asking questions, and you have to give a better reason, right? So, like, in essence, we were saying before, like, having your mission is more important than focusing on stopping doing the negative parts of your life, right? If you have a drinking problem, the answer is not stop drinking. Jordan Peterson talks about this as well. The answer is focus all of your energy on what would be a life that would make that not even, it would just burn away. It wouldn't even be appealing.
This is it. Like, I loved drinking. I had a wonderful time. I was very good at drinking. I had wonderful adventures. There's a version of me that would come out when drinking that I liked very much. So not drinking forever, it was like, how the fuck would that ever happen? But realizing the greater adventure, realizing that what I liked about drink was the adventures it would lead me to, and realizing that there was a greater adventure available to me, and it was one of my own choosing. So rather than accepting whatever random adventure drink would present me with, I woke up in a skip in Marina del Rey. Interesting. What an adventure. I can't quite remember it, but I'm sure it was pretty good. Versus the adventure I chose, the adventure of my own choosing, the adventure of a lifetime, the adventure you lean into, and it gets better and better and more glorious. And you do that, and then you're like, oh, I'd love to go get drunk right now, but I've got this adventure. I ain't got time to be hungover tomorrow. I mean, I would really enjoy it. I mean, I really like you guys, and I'd love to get drunk, but I got this adventure. Shit. And then there's that. Then that works. That works to this day. To this fucking day. I'm like, years. I'm like 2018 was when I stopped drinking. And I was a DJ in Hollywood at the time, and everyone who DJs in Hollywood is a functional alcoholic of some kind. It's part of the culture. All the bar staff will drink. The rich people will try and pour tequila shots down your head if they're like a transition you did, something like that. It's just constant barrage of booze. But I'm like 4 years past that. So now it's like, well, I don't have any problems anymore. I could go and get drunk with the guys from CrossFit or whatever it is on this thingy publication. But you're like, oh no, but the adventure, I've got this record I'm making tomorrow. Oh well. And the decision is made for you, because there is no decision, because you already made the decision. The decision was the adventure of your own choosing. Again, definiteness of purpose. Again, will, your own will, seems to be the theme of this conversation.
Yeah, I've reflected on the idea of thy will, as you were saying earlier in the podcast, right? The importance of sacrificing, and this is the interchangeability of words, right? It's like my will for thy will. When I pray now, I say, show me thy way, because thy way serves me. It serves everyone else around me. It serves you, and it seems that's again, yeah, I go back to Jordan Peterson. It's just truth. It's there's like, I don't know if you've seen the meme, right? It's all over the internet where it's like on the beginning, it is, take beauty, for example, the meaning in life is beauty. And then it's like, there's more to life, to beauty, all this stuff, the thinking mind. It's like, life is all about beauty. Right. So it's like this.
Yeah, as in you've got like the simple man on the left and the wise man on the right, and then you've got the overcomplicating things, overthinking person in the middle. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's very much true. Like, this just goes back to what I was saying earlier about the relearning. You know all this stuff as a baby, as a simple human, and then overthinking things. You have your teenage phase. I felt like society was going through a big teenage phase. The new atheists, and all of that sort of thing. It was like the angsty teenager who's angry at God and angry at their parents for not explaining things to them properly. Well, that is all not true and not real, because because when I was a little boy, I said, well, why have they got a dishwasher and we don't have a dishwasher? Why did God give them a dishwasher and not us? And Mum didn't know. So God's not real.
Actually, I got a question for you. This just popped in my head. I was just talking about this with my fiance. Santa Claus. I see different takes on Santa Claus. And, I'm looking to have children. And I got to share my experience. First time I've shared my experience on this. When I was a kid, I found out Santa wasn't real. And I was devastated. And, for me, I kind of don't want to teach Santa Claus. But at the same time, I don't want to have a child where it's like, oh, I don't believe in Santa Claus. I'm better. So for me, it's like, what are your thoughts on the whole Santa Claus
This
thing?
is easy. I used to have this. I went to that's the same thing. That's that kind of angsty teen, new atheist, like, oh yeah, like Santa Claus, that's teaching him to believe in God. That's just like, oh yeah, believe in this thing, it'll bring you presents. And that's just like getting people to believe in God. All right, believe in God and you'll go to heaven. It's quite simplistic. And I had that notion many, many years ago. When I'm I won't do Santa Claus. Blah, 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 blah. That's a betrayal, a lie. How could you lie to your own children? Blah, 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 blah.
Because I see the two opposing forces.
There's no opposing force. One thing, Santa Claus is real. Santa Claus is more real than you or I. It's a bit like it's like, you and I will die and Santa Claus will go on. Santa Claus will still go on forever. Santa Claus is out there right now. Santa Claus is in malls across the world, on cards. Santa Claus is all over the place. Santa Claus is way more real than you or I. And Santa Claus has a uniformity of being that is undeniable. We have songs about this. There's a great Jonathan Pageau song in the Meaning Wave universe where he breaks this down expertly. But I've heard similar, people talking about like how, Batman is way more real than you or I. Oh, Batman's not real. Batman's real. Motherfuckers know who Batman is. If I do that, I take this card and I take that and I show that up. That's fucking Batman. Actually, I mean, it needs to be a bit pointier. Point being, that's real. Point being, Santa Claus exists. Obviously, Santa Claus exists. You write a letter to Santa. You're not writing a letter to Maureen in the Arctic. And when you get the letter back from Santa, it's not from Maureen in the Arctic. She's channeling Santa Claus. That's what she's doing. We lost you for a second there.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's back. So one, Santa Claus is real. Two, Santa Claus, which is the other song, there's a Jordan Peterson song, where he talks about, well, Santa Claus is a game. It's not a lie.
I guess I'm gonna have to.
He's very much. Now. He's like, tell the truth or at least don't lie, right? So you think, but Santa Claus isn't a lie. It's a game. It's a game of pretend. When you're playing with your children, see, children understand playing, right? They understand the importance of playing. They love playing, like creating fantasy worlds. My son, he's 9. He's playing. He's like got his toys. He's got his Legos. He's rah shouting, talking, creating characters, this and the other. What is he lying? What is he? Oh, that's with that Lego isn't alive, Hercules. Why are you talking to it? What are you retarded? You know what I mean? children, playing with children is very, very important. Santa Claus is a game of pretend, is a beautiful, magical, super exciting thing that brings this wonder and joy. Why would you deprive someone of that? Someone who's very, very sophisticated, because
Well, I
children
guess
are very, very sophisticated.
the pushback is based strictly on my own experience, because
Of
of my own
course,
experience
like,
was
when
it was
you found
painful
out-
when I found out. So then how to reconcile that? Because I agree with you, and that's why I'm not like full on that. That's why I asked you.
Yeah, well, the way you do is the way you do, and this is where, you know, people have failed essentially, and this is why religion is in the space it's in, is because people fail to be able to adequately explain it and explain its utility and explain its purpose in a world that demands sort of scientific, material explanations for everything. You know, I know my own vicar. What are they called? It was Catholic church I was at. Priest did not have adequate answers for me, and he could have. There was things he could have said that would have made sense to a young human. Similarly, there are ways of explaining to a young person who is moving from the world of the child world to the world of the young man, which is a transitional period, which ideally would be guided. And lots of societies around the world and cultures had all manner of things and rituals which contained that guidance within it. I've got some Joseph Campbell songs where he talks about that, certain cultures where they would do things like other cultures.
Joseph Campbell. That's the last thing I heard. It just cut out.
Joseph Campbell, he talks about some of the rituals to navigate that transition from child to adult that various cultures around the world have. Some, for example, one where the boy, when he reaches like 12 or something, they put a mask on him and give him a spear. And they chuck him into the forest, can't come back until he's like conquered some animal or defeated a foe. Sometimes it will be another person from the tribe who also has a mask and goes in and fucking fights him, and he has to like fucking nearly kill him or what have you. And when he comes back, he's no longer a child, and all the child things are now gone. And he understands that. He now understands he's a man. He has man things to do. They present him with a wife. Boom, off he goes. We don't do these things without. We just expect for some reason people to work it out. You know, so you could guide. There's guidance that could be done. The things that we've already talked about could be explained. You could talk about what do you mean by exist? Right? So you say, oh, that doesn't exist. You lied to me. Or was that actually does exist? He is real. Like, how can you deny he's real? Go to a shopping center, you'll see him. You'll see one of an aspect of him that is uniform wherever you look. Like, it's a bit like the spirit of the father thing. The spirit of Santa Claus is very easily observable. And if someone deviates from it, if you go and see one of these mall Santas and he starts swearing or something, he starts bad Santaing, that's not Santa. Suddenly the spell is broken. That's no longer Santa. Santa is a very specific idea, and it's a real idea. So, you know, children are a lot smarter than people give them credit for, and can understand these sorts of concepts if they're explained to them. So the only reason that it would be a negative and you would feel lied to or something is if you're just kind of jerked out of the situation and nothing is ever explained to you. You're not, you know, given any answers or guided in any way or reassured in any way. And you just left there thinking, well, my parents are liars and I'm a retard. This sucks. You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
just,
what I got, yeah, I actually that shines light on it, right? It's focusing on the spirit of it rather than the physical manifestation of it.
yeah, it's very childish, this kind of modern obsession with nailing everything down into an equation or something tangible or something, you know, and anything that exists outside of that doesn't exist, because most of what exists outside of that. The majority of that which exists cannot be defined by the primitive Neanderthal grumblings of our contemporary language.
Yeah.
Let alone our understanding of math and science, which, you know, is wonderful, but is infinitesimal compared to that which is, and that even that which we will understand Perhaps in fucking this lifetime, things
Yeah, well,
are
that's the wonder
escalating
of
quite rapidly.
science. The ability to question science is science, right? Otherwise, science becomes scientism, just like religion becomes religionism.
Of course, but we must reject this bizarre urge to dismiss things that do not fit inside it
Mm.
and cannot be explained by it, and just pretend these things don't exist. Again, that's what music is for. That's what art is for. Music and art are intonations of the capital T truth that cannot be described by language and only experienced. They're, they're an intonation of the divine. They're a hint at the greater thing that we cannot fully comprehend with the limitations of our being, of our mech suit, which must, it's necessary. There's a wonderful Neil Gaiman comic where a character decides to, he wants to harness the power of the muses. And so he hunts one of the muses down and he kidnaps her and he locks her in a basement and he rapes her to get all these plays and ideas and wonderful things. He's very pleased with himself. At the end of the story, I can't remember exactly how it gets there, but he gets his wish, which is he gets the power of the muses 100% unfiltered. So he no longer needs to keep this muse captured, tied up, and rape the muse. He's got 100% access to what some might call idea space or 5D or whatever it is, where that space, the land of the muses. And he has it all pouring through him 100% with zero filter. And of course, it drives him instantly insane. He's trying to write the ideas on, he doesn't have a pen, so he's trying to write the ideas on a wall with his bare fingers. He's just covered in blood. He's destroyed it, like, just his fingers are bloody stumps because he's just trying to get this stuff out, and he's just a human. Like, that which is far too much for what we are, to be able to see, understand, conduit, anything, and that's a cool thing to know. That's an important thing to know. There's a
it's like, what the hell is water?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorites. That's a good one. Shouts out to David Foster Wallace. And the This Is Water Wave record, which everybody who's heard it recommends. It's lots of people's favorite.
So I had a couple questions.
But yeah, just finish on that. Obviously Santa Claus exists. What do you mean by existence anyway? And who are you to think you know? Who are you anyway? That's like the Terence McKenna "Don't Worry" song. Worry is preposterous. Worry is praying to the devil. Who do you think you are that you should worry, for crying out loud? Terence McKenna is a great example of this sort of thing. Terence McKenna says, don't believe anything. Don't give yourself up to belief. Belief is a prison. You can have suspicions. Actually, that was Robert Anton Wilson, I believe, said he recognizes
don't believe
that
anybody else's bullshit, Anson. Remember seeing a video from him saying that?
Yeah, but he's also I don't believe anything. I don't know anything. I'm wise enough to know I don't know anything, but I've got some suspicions. You can have suspicions, and that's cool. You know what I mean? But you don't know shit, and that's good to know.
Yeah, Terrence. Yeah, that was actually, I've played that so many times. It was just a short clip, and then the fact that you made a song about it was just like, that's led me closer to this podcast right now. All those songs, it just shows that there is that unifying spirit. I mean, that just reframed anxiety so much that it made so much deep. I mean, it's the logos, right? It was such a deep common sense. It's just, you don't know enough to worry. And, as you say, strap, get your gun, and then just don't worry. That's what he said. It's just it's so simple. The fact that, there's so much to know. There's absolutely so many variables and so much you can't know it. And it's
that's what we were just talking about. Yeah, exactly. Who the fuck do you think you are? Jesus, as we were just talking about, like, we don't have the physical capacity to know. We don't have the framework to know. We don't have the eyes with which to see. There is too much data for these things to transcribe. You'd go fucking crazy. Can't do it. Don't even be like, it's ridiculous. Yeah, shout out to Terence McKenna. What a guy.
Yeah. I got two questions for you. I appreciate this conversation because these are my favorite. They just flow. We just wing it. But
Anxiety is very easy to fix. Like the suffering, the unnecessary suffering, life is suffering, right? Or life is sorrowful, however you want to translate it. There's an inevitability, right? There is an inevitability that life will contain suffering, and the question is what you're going to do with it. However, there is a huge amount, and even more so, amount of unnecessary suffering.
yes,
And it is the unnecessary suffering that is the cause of anxiety. It is the cause of the unnecessary suffering is all a direct result of man existing outside of the moment that he is in, either in an imagined future that is usually some kind of a nightmare, some imagined problematic future, or an imagined beautiful past, neither of which exist. The past does not exist. It's recreated. Memory, it does not work how most people think it works. Memory is not a photocopy of an event. It's a recreation of an idea of an event, usually shaped by other people's memory ideas of it, similarly, and other things that have happened in your life and the person you've become. So it's not real. So people who sit around dream, the past, sitting around listening to their old David Bowie records, getting sad about the past, shouts out to my dad. And people who sit around worrying about the future, what the fuck is going to happen if this happens, if I do this? And neither of them are real. None of them exist. And that's where the suffering, the unnecessary suffering, the anxiety, the sorrow, the misery, the regret, all of that exists as a result of existing in places that do not exist. Just utterly unnecessary. The deeper into this moment you can get, that's the deeper, the closer you will get to God, the closer you will get to truth, and the happier and least anxious you will be. And you know this if you've ever, done a really intense back squat or something, because everything else will fade away and you'll go down. Everything else will evaporate and you'll just be there with the truth of everything. And time will slow down. It'll just be you and the capital C truth of it all. And that's beautiful. And pain can do that. I think that's a good part of what Goggins talks about. Pain is actually really useful because pain will root you to the moment. If you don't run from it, if you go lean into it, if you accept it, if you say, okay, I will take this, I will go into this, I'll lean, and that will bring you right into the moment and take you away from unnecessary suffering.
Yeah.
It's pretty fucking simple.
Yeah. And there's something beautiful about like, it's integrating it, because there's times where I've gone into pain where it's like, the overtraining and it's just too much, where it's like, I'm hurting myself, I'm being mean, versus welcoming the pain. It's just a little tweak on it. And then it's okay. It makes me think of Ram Dass. He's got a lot of good stuff where he, thank you, God, for pain, like getting to that place. Thank you, God, for suffering. Thank you. And he hung around people who had AIDS patients, who were AIDS. Yeah. And, they're not, to your point, which I've reflected on. What I think about when you say that is the kingdom of heaven. Seek first the kingdom of heaven and everything else will be given to you. When you seek everything else, I want a wife, I want a house, I want this, I want that, you can get those things, but that doesn't fulfill you, because then you just want the next thing. You're not, as you said, you're not living in the present, you're living in the past and the future. So when you seek that, and I think there's different words for it, peace, presence, as you're saying, being fully here in the now, it leads you to where you need to go instead of where you think you need to go. It's such a fucking mind fuck.
But it's very, very simple. It's also where the zone is. I learned a lot of this stuff just through experimentation and doing, right? What pulls you out of the zone is what pulls you out of the moment. And what pulls you out of the moment. So it's going to be friction. It's going to be unreal things. It's going to be concerns of a past or a future. It's going to be overthinking. What if I do this? This might not work. You'll be out of the zone. You just keep moving. You trust, and you use certain things like synchronicities as your signposts rather than demanding material, concrete answers to specific questions. Then you can keep moving. You can stay in that flow. You can keep in that glittering space. And that's true in every aspect of life.
Yeah.
If you can do that in one thing, so if you can do, make a choice to do that in one area of your life and keep doing that, you'll find that it starts to spill over and infect in a good way the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And if you keep allowing that to happen, then your whole life can become that zone, magical thing, and anxiety and regret and things like that will evaporate and will cease to exist. And then you can use, because those things are just manifestations of an over reliance of useful things, like we have this weird thing in our society where like prejudice is a bad word, right? But it means to prejudge, and that's actually very useful. If you're maybe I should not drink this liquid because it's stinky and it's got a weird thing coming off it. I think it might kill me. I'm going to prejudge this liquid. This weird neighboring tribe is coming towards us and they've got lots of spears. And like, no, I won't prejudge that they're about to murder us all. That would be bad. That would be bad.
Yeah.
Very silly. Very silly.
Yeah. Denying your intuition.
Yeah, indeed.
Indeed. But I think the push, it's the separation between that and programmed false beliefs and separating those two. Because, I think you can teach someone, well, anybody who has a blue shirt on is bad. And you teach a kid that, well, over time, every time they see a blue shirt, they think it's bad. So to be able to separate intuition from false belief systems, it's tricky because people have to learn that in their own experience. So it can't come from external forces telling you how to think. It has to.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, people can, but you can encourage. I mean, this goes down to parenting and what have you, right? But
yeah.
Because it's the opposite is done by our society, is people are sort of encouraged to not pay attention to their intuition and to go against their intuition and to hand over those faculties to authority systems in the same way that God was stolen from the people by the priest class. It was like, you don't talk to God, the priests talk to God, and then you talk to the priest, motherfucker. You don't have anything to do with the transcendent and the divine. That's those guys' job. You're just a moron. In the same way, like in the modern world, they say, oh, you don't protect your family. The police does that. If someone comes to attack your family, you don't do shit. And if you do, we'll punish you. We've got our people, will do it for you. And so on and so forth. There's a variation of that in every aspect of contemporary life. And that's something we must reclaim. And that goes down to the thing that we were talking about earlier, which is the radical self-responsibility. So it seems that the keys to our salvation are in a radical self-responsibility and an existence in the moment, which also actually are kind of the same thing. The deeper into it you go.
Yeah. Yeah, the deeper into it you go. It takes courage to go, deep within yourself. Face the man in the mirror.
Yeah, that's the moment.
What advice would you give to your younger self? What would be the number one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
I don't know if I would. That would change things. But fuck with the science street continuum. And also the younger self, he knew pretty much. Depends how young, you go, there was, like I said, you start off the very young me, he had it figured out. I'm proud of that guy. He had a lot of stuff figured out. I think I like him. He did good. He stuck to his guns. He didn't back down. He didn't compromise himself in the face of a society that tried to make him do so with violence and all sorts of tricks, and he didn't fall for any of them. So shout out to him. And he knew that on the other side of that suffering, it would be okay, that he would get through. All he had to do was like hang on and not. I would say one thing I didn't have dialed in until very recently was the physicality. I was tricked as a kid into thinking that like people who were physical or sporty or worked out or what have you were like different to me, and they were morons and evil or something, and I was arty, and we didn't have arty type, musicy type people didn't do that or what have you. There was that separation. This weird lie that's propagated by culture, like the idea of the jock in the movie, right? The person who's who's physically strong is somehow a moron. When in real life, that's really not the case in my gym. This old fucking, very, Marcus Aurelius quoting, very sort of wise, spiritual, cognizant bad motherfuckers. It's a lie, you know what I mean? So I would advise young me to do some push-ups and lift some heavy shit and get good at physicality, because that's the greatest threat to the dreaded capital T they, is as Plato had it. Was it the warrior poet? Someone who's got their mind and their body dialed in equally.
Yeah.
The mind, spirit, and the body as dialed in, as jacked. Get jacked in body, get jacked in mind, get jacked in spirit. You know what I mean? Turn yourself into that ultimate mech suit version of yourself, then let God drive. You know what I mean?
Last question for you. Of all the music that you've made, do you have, because I want people to listen to you. I've seen how it's helped me in my life, and for people who are on the same path, I want them to go to your YouTube channel. I want them to check you out, because this is good music. It's not like this fake positivity, right? It's real. It's authentic. It's sharing experience, right? And I think for a long time, that's one of the problems that's happened. It's maybe eternal, right? Maybe it's an eternal problem, bridging the gap of expressing true positivity instead of saying, the fake bullshit positivity. These are real message that, real is more positive than being, positive. What is some of your favorite work that you've done?
Cool thing about it,
Maybe a few songs.
Before Meaning Wave, I found it difficult to listen to my own music because I was listening to myself, and all I could ever hear was the mistakes, or all I could ever hear was the version of myself that no longer exists. The old, don't compare yourself to anyone else, but compare yourself to yourself yesterday. So listening to my music was like listening to myself yesterday, and yesterday I was fucking retarded in some ways. You know what I mean? So I would only hear that. But since Meaning Wave, I listen to any of it, and it's fucking great. Because kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, the words, for the most part, sometimes I would still do things, but I'll make sure it's something I'm very, very sure about if I'm going to say it. It's all coming from a place of complete legitimacy and authority. And the music is really, really good. So literally all of it, I'm very happy with. Literally all of it is great. And I love all of it. And continue to. I wrote 3 songs this week, which are fantastic. Will be coming out in January, and you're going to love. So it's all great. So I couldn't really say, I'll go listen to that one. That one's the best. I couldn't say that at all. I could say, think of something that you're interested in, or something that ails you, or what have you, or a mood or something, and there'll be something for that. If you're, for example, if you're interested in Santa Claus, existing or not, go listen to Meaning Wave Christmas, or go listen to the new The Meaning of Christmas mix, which is like an hour and 20 minutes of Christmas music with vocals from people like Terrence McKenna and Jordan B. Peterson and Jonathan Pajou and Paul Harvey, telling beautiful Christmas stories. Maybe that's somewhere. Hey, maybe you're having some trouble in the gym. Check out the Get After It playlist on your streaming platform of choice. Or maybe check out some of the Jocko or Goggins or Joe Rogan or Wes Watson records, Maybe you're interested in Stoic philosophy. Check out the Marcus Aurelius album, or some of the Epictetus or Seneca songs, or maybe the Stoic Wave playlist or mix album. There are many rooms in the mansion and many places for you to explore. What's cool about Meaning Wave now is it's getting to the point that I always wanted, which is it's now a world you can get lost in. It's a world for you to discover. Maybe you find one song, oh, I like this, and then, oh shit, there's more. there's this. Oh, there's that guy. Oh, there's that thing. Oh my goodness. Oh, really? You know, I see people going on that journey all the time. I'll look in my Discord or something, or whatever comment section. There'll be people expressing that. Holy shit! I heard this one song, and there's more. There's more. There's this. There's what the fuck? Even someone like you, you're like you're a meaning wave enjoyer. You didn't know there were Christmas songs. You know.
Yeah, I had no idea about Santa.
Yeah,
I did
you
see
didn't know
that you had the holiday ones out, but
You-
for me personally, for me it's the gym. That's
Yeah.
my favorite of your work. The
Yeah.
fact that I've listened to these guys for so long, and now you're just taking like the heart of their messages and putting it in just a few minutes. That resonates so much more to me than a lot of these big rappers who are out in Hollywood, or they're just talking about a lot of them, not all, but guns and rape and sex, and it's like, okay, you're just appealing to the lower self, right? And which give the devil its due. But if that's
Danny Brown. Yeah, Danny Brown. I love rap music. It's my favorite. But Danny Brown? He's a rapper. He's great. He's very funny. He's one of these. A lot of rappers now are sort of moving into doing podcasts. Joe Budden pioneered that. Shouts out to him. But anyway, Danny Brown's got a podcast, and he was on it the other day talking about. I don't even listen to rap music no more. I don't want to hear what these rap niggas he's talking about. He goes, he just listens to instrumentals now. He's like, they make me feel insecure. Every rapper he was talking about how you can fuck my bitch, how much money you got. He make me feel bad about myself. I'm like 40. I'm like, maybe I'm not doing as well as I used to. This rapper's doing better than me. I'm like, you talking to me directly? I feel, so I can't listen to these motherfuckers no more. He's so funny. Like, he's just like, I don't listen to people telling me they can fuck my bitch. Maybe they can fuck my bitch. That makes me feel bad. And yeah, exactly. But like, I mean, I've talked about this a lot, but it's a funny conundrum that like 90-something% of pop music is about the experience of like the teenager and the horny college student. And you have this weird situation where like people in their 40s are, because they want to exist within the contemporary music industry, so they just keep making songs from that perspective. And you never hear any of the rest of the story of humanity, which is such a big story.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about the mythology. If the mythology is to encode the knowledge of the society, and the music only has one bit of the story, the music's just got the bit where like Luke Skywalker gets a boner. You know what I mean? In the mythology, it doesn't have Obi-Wan, it doesn't have any of the different points of the journey. It just has the bit where Luke gets a boner and goes to a club and like, finger bangs a girl on the dance floor. Like that's all we're getting in our music. That's some bullshit. There's more.
Have you seen any of David Hawkins' work?
David Hawkins?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I know that.
I'll send you. He's got it's a scale of consciousness, and it's expressed in basically like a rainbow. And on the red is like guilt, shame, apathy. You move up, and then right before the top of it is pride. And the only way to get to the next level of it's like neutrality and courage is you have to sacrifice pride. So what you're saying is it's like that lower, it's like we're all a rainbow, right? Not a pride flag, but a rainbow, right? Which is on the bottom, is the red, and on the top of us is that, that bluish purple, right? What society has done is flip that.
Everything is inversion. All is inversion. Where is the fucking... I was working on some music for the Brave New World TV show, which didn't get used in the end. But in Brave New World, they have a song. Brave New World is a book. It's like 100 years old at this point. It's often paired with 1984, and it was where we're going. It was prophetic, but it wasn't prophetic because the guy who wrote it, his brother was working with some of the people who were kind of engineering the future. So he was more of like this is what we're working on. So in Brave New World, children aren't born to parents. They're essentially born in factories. They're raised by the state. There's like a caste system. You're a B, or a C. And everybody takes a lot of drugs and has a lot of sex to sort of distract and placate them. And they have a song, and they have this drink called Soma, which gets them out of their heads, and they have lots of sex and drink a lot of that, and that's what they do. This book written over 100 years ago at this point. And the lyrics to the song go something along the lines of, "We are the beautiful ones, and we shine like a billion suns. So let's drink to our annihilation, annihilation, annihilation." That's basically the lyrics of whatever's in the top 10 right now. You go listen to the top 10 right now. That's the lyrics. We're beautiful. We're amazing. Let's get fucked.
Yeah.
Let's fucking get fucked. We're beautiful. We're amazing. Let's get fucking annihilated. That's literally the lyrics of most contemporary pop songs right there. And that was, that was the world. The world envisioned in Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, who knew what the fuck was up. So that's interesting. That's where we're at. But,
but you're going into leading those 20% out of that, that's what
Yeah,
you're
well-
doing. That's what I'm doing,
yeah, just providing another perspective.
That's it. Yeah. And it's not
Cool.
forcing it, just saying it's up to you. If you want to listen to this or, see. if
Yeah,
you
well,
listen-
my thing's always like, you don't want to be telling people what to do. No one wants to be told what to do. So who the fuck are you? Shut the fuck up. Leave me alone.
Correct.
But I will tell you what's worked for me. And here's the thing with Meaning Wave is like every record I make, that's something I'm learning. I need to learn. That's something I want to incorporate into my being. So I'm turning it into a record because that's the best way I know to incorporate something into my being, is to turn it into a record. Same way I used to read my revision notes over ambient music and play it when I went to sleep when I was a little kid. Like, that's what I'm doing with Meaning Wave, right? So if there's a record, I made it because it was something I needed to learn. And it's worked for me. And that's why it's there. I ain't telling you to do shit, but I'm saying this is what I have found, and this has worked for me. And this is my life now compared to what it was before. And yeah, you do whatever you like.
Awesome. Any last words for the podcast? You want your listeners to know?
Nah, man. I think it's been an excellent conversation.
Where's
Shout
the
out
number
to you.
one people that can find where they can find you? Number one
Wherever
place.
they are. Wherever they are, it's for people. Some people live on Spotify. We're on Spotify. If you're a YouTube person, we're on YouTube. If you like to consume music in 30-second chunks on a vertical video platform, you'll find us in that area as well. Or you just go meaningwave.com, because happiness is a side effect of meaning.
There it is, right there. My brother, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, de nada, hermano, de nada. You bad motherfucker, you. I appreciate you. And that cat.
Past
Fell
that, you got to
asleep.
pet a cat when you see one.
You got to pet a cat when you see one. Yeah. Yeah. My cat's, he's got one of them fucking neck things on right now. Stop him biting it himself. He had some mosquito bites and shit. He looks like a space cat. It's good.